welcome back. Episode 46. We sit down with Chief Cobb, Butch Cobb, Jersey City retired deputy chief, Army veteran. He is a American Fire Service Hall of Fame inductee. This man's a legend. Over 3 decades of service. Listen to what he says about Brotherhood, the American Fire Service as a whole. He was a 9/11 first responder there before the towers and after the towers fell. So listen to that part of the story. It's really good. And wait till the end when he talks about what he would change in the American Fire Service if he could snap his fingers and make things better. Don't forget, this episode is brought to you by Old Man Copper Smoke Eater Mustache Wax. Smells like a freaking house fire. Makes you think about jobs all day long. Along with the Williams Key, helping us with respectful entry. Both those guys, discount code COPPER, COPPER, saves you 20%. These guys are just doing this to save you money. Thank you so much. We appreciate you all. Stay tuned. It's a good episode. All right. Welcome back, everybody. I had the privilege to sit down with my most seasoned and wholeheartedly with all love saying old timer coming into the show today. So I have Robert Butch Cobb. He's a Firehouse Hall of Fame legend right now, inductee. He's a U.S. Army veteran, retired deputy chief from Jersey City. Those boys burn. He's been in the fire service career for 34 years. In some of the busiest cities and companies as chief of operations, chief of training, OEM, Homeland Security, deputy coordinator. He's a former volunteer fire chief in New Jersey and 9/11 responder. Chief went on to lead the community for hazard mitigation for ISO, helping shape national fire protection grading and standards. For more than 3 decades, he's been a key firehouse contributor, developing hands-on training programs, national conferences, and safety seminars such as the Worcestershire 6, the Charleston 9 programs, all grounded in his lifelong belief that, his words, train like your life depends on it, which is one of my favorite sayings, Chief. So outside of me mumbling and stumbling, did I screw anything up, mispronounce anything? Is there anything you'd like to add to your bio, Chief?
No, I think that was well said. I am an older guy. I went to my first fire, I think, in 2009. I went to my last fire in 2019. So it's a long stretch. I've been around for almost 50 years, and I still love it. I just can't get rid of it. I still go to conferences. I'll sit in a class. I'll take notes. New instructors up there, and I chat with them, and still can't get enough. My wife's leaning towards cutting back a little bit, but it's too late.
Well, perfect, Chief. So you found the right platform. Thank you for, first of all, your time this evening. It is our honor to have you on the show. But going through your bio, one of my soft spots, I am a veteran also, but you were U.S. Army veteran, time of war, I believe. So if you don't mind, if we could just start in the Army and then transition into the American Fire Service and just start talking to the audience, sir.
Yeah. There's so much similarities in both of those. I got out of high school at 67, didn't want to go to college. I figured somewhere down the road, and I figured I'd save my parents a few bucks, I'll enlist. I come from a military family. My dad, there were 5 Cobb brothers. They all served in World War II. I'll talk about my Uncle Frank later, who was kind of my hero, but I went down and enlisted August of 67. Unbeknownst to me, I went to basic training at Fort Dix. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit because that's my first dive into Brotherhood. Before it was a popular term. It was, and like I said before, I hope it continues in the fire service. But so I went to basic training at Fort Dix. They sent me to Fort Huachuca, Arizona, which was the Combat Surveillance and Electronic Warfare School. And I learned how to basically sit in the right-hand seat of something called an OV-1 Mohawk, which is up on my shelf somewhere, 2-seater, with the 1st Aviation Brigade, went to Vietnam for a year, 68, 69, a little over a year. Fortunate to come back. I left, I guess there were about 14 or 15 of us in my crew, left 6 of them behind. But it was an eye-opener. But the key to this whole thing is when I got home, and I didn't realize it when I joined, New Jersey, and there's a lot of things I could say Jersey doesn't do. one of the things they do is if you're a veteran and you live in New Jersey, when you come back, they have what's called absolute preference on a civil service test. And everything in Jersey, civil service, fire, police, public, you name it, it's civil service. So all I had to do was get a 70 on that test, and my name went to the top of the list. So it's called absolute preference. So, when I look back on it, it was kind of worth it. I mean, good and bad things happen, but
Chief, is that real quick? Is that still the case in the state of New Jersey? Do you
yeah,
know?
yes, absolutely. You come back, you go to the top of the list. Now, when I came back, of course, there were a lot of Vietnam veterans. I think there was 70 in my class, 70 probies, and probably 65 of them were Vietnam veterans. So they just took us and listed us from one to, whatever. But if you weren't a veteran, you weren't getting on the job for a few years, which is fine with me. But yeah, so that's how I got my start. Always wanted to be a fireman. My dad hung out with firemen. He wanted to be. Um, he had a business going, but he always wanted to be a fireman, and he didn't get to pass the test, and I'll tell you why. When World War II broke out, him and all his brothers enlisted. He went to the Navy, was on board the USS Yorktown, saw a lot of battles, not wounded, but got injured, on board the Yorktown. And when he came back out to take the test, he couldn't pass it because of his knee. So that ended his career. But he played softball on a couple different fire departments in Hudson County, Weehawken and Union City. And there was a bar down the corner called the Nick's Tavern. And I used to go down as a little kid. He'd give me like 50 cents. I would give me like 5 sodas. And all firemen and cops. That's what this bar was. And they always had a good time. And I noticed that as a little kid. These guys are really happy together. And he continued to play softball with them and et cetera, et cetera. And then he had an uncle at the time who was a little older than him, but he was a fireman over on the east side of New York, Manhattan, I guess back in the 50s and 60s. We would go over and visit. I was like 6, 7, 8 years old. We went over to visit, and it was the same thing. These guys were always happy. I mean, I didn't realize what they were doing around the coffee table, but they were laughing, having good times, in and out the door, bells going off because it was gong and register back then. And then I noticed we'd go to my uncle's house. He lived up in Valley Cottage, New York. He built a house from scratch, him and the guys from his company. I'm talking about from scratch, from leveling the land, cinder blocks, framing. It was just them. And the funny thing about it is I remember as they put the walls up, they filled the walls with empty beer cans. And I guarantee you this house was well insulated.
Then they're probably still there to this day.
Absolutely, yeah. All this stuff just stuck with me. And I just decided, maybe 10, 11 years old, my dad joined the Volley. We moved to Dumont, New Jersey. We moved out of Hudson County, Dumont, New Jersey. He joined the Volleys, went up through the ranks, became the chief in 83, I think 84. I was always in the firehouse. I have to tell the story. Back when I was a kid, it was before they were junior firemen, but I'll tell you, my main job was shining brass. Brasso in a red. I don't know how many kids out there listening remember that, but that was my job. Nozzles, brass, couplings, shining them. That's what I did. And the whole thing I got caught up in it. And I came back from Vietnam. In New Jersey back then, you had to be 21 to be a cop or a fireman.
Mm.
By the time I came back from Vietnam, I was 21. I could join. It was interesting. I became a fireman. I became just engrossed in training. Anytime I had training, I didn't care what day of the week it was, I was there. I was taking notes, scribbling stuff down, and doing as much as I could. And I got hooked in training, and it was good. And those guys were a lot of them World War II career vets. Their souls were built on brass and steel, I think, because I saw them run into places that would scare me now, to tell you the truth. So just being around them, again, I went up. I had a time in Dumont where things were changing. The older guys were retiring. The newer guys were like me. They wanted more. They wanted different, and they started looking instead of the oldest guy becoming the chief or the guy that on Sundays, bought the most beers as they traveled around with four companies and like I don't know 2.5 square miles maybe. We had 3 engines and a ladder truck and a utility truck. But anyway, they came to me. I became a lieutenant for a couple of years and a captain for a couple of years. And then the younger guys came to me and said, we'd like you to run for assistant chief. I was pretty young. I was like 27 or 28 years old. I've never had anybody, I think, under 60 at that point. And I said, I can give it a shot. I mean, I don't know a lot, and when I think back on it, I probably shouldn't have been an assistant chief, but you know what? They got me elected. I hate to say that I beat one of the older guys, much older guy, by one vote. And there were 80 guys voting, and I got one more than he did. And I went up 2 years as assistant chief, and then ran for, chief of department, and I did that, and it was fun. But I did that. I look back on it not as a chief. I did it as the coordinator of everybody that wanted to make change. I would get them in a room. We would talk about what we needed, and one of the guys who I think most of your listeners will know was a young kid named Mickey Conboy. Before he moved to New York City or New York State, Mickey's a lieutenant, Rescue 3 now. He's retiring in August. He'll be 65. Probably one of the most decorated firemen you'd ever see. And his company started talking to me about a rescue company. And this was 78, I think. And we talked about it, and um, there were 2 engines in a ladder truck. There was 1 engine in a ladder truck on the east side of the tracks, we called it, and they wanted in the second engine on the other side of the track. So I said, all right, give up your utility truck. We'll give it to engine 3, make it a rescue 3. Not that simple, but that's what we did. And they built it into a sensational rescue company that a lot of Bergen County, looks at as a real model. So anyway, I got done there, and then the whole time I'm in Jersey City, and I'm just enjoying my career. Long time. I think I was a fireman for 8, 9 years, maybe 10 years before I took the lieutenant's test, which I
So
didn't do
Chief,
well on.
Chief, real quick, just to clarify, right? You were talking before, that was all your volley experience
Yeah.
going through the ranks and everything else. So now, at what year did you get hired with Jersey City? When did you become a professional fireman?
I became a career firefighter in 72 with a smaller fire department in Hudson County, right next door to Jersey City. It's called Weehawken, New Jersey. We had 3 engines and a ladder truck. Again, it was civil service, and I was at the top of the list. So actually, Ridgewood, New Jersey called me first. I was 1, but I didn't take that job because it was just didn't fit who I was. And I took Weehawken. They were doing a little bit of running. Waited 3 years, and then Jersey City called me. And I left Weehawken and went to Jersey City in 75. That was kind of my dream because they were busy. Um, a lot of buffs going there, a lot of pictures taken, and I knew some guys there, and they were just, it was kind of the heart of what New Jersey had for their war years. And so I started there in 75. Spent my first 6 months in Engine 1 downtown, which was pretty busy. I was told we had 5,000 vacant buildings. Jersey City was only 15, 16 square miles. So we had something every day. But this is going to sound crazy, but I used to sit with the Rolodex. We still had the boxes coming in. I looked at the Rolodex, and I found a company, Engine 20 down in South End. I'd sit in Engine 1 and listen to the South End companies. They were just running all the time. So I found a company that was on every box. If they weren't on the first alarm, they were on the second alarm, they were on the third alarm, they were on the fourth alarm, and they didn't relocate. And that was a key thing for me. I didn't like to get relocated, from a busy area to go. So anyway, I got a bid. We can talk about the bidding system, good and bad. So I bid to Engine 20. Spots opened up. A lot of the older guys were leaving, and Engine 20 Ladder 5 was the busiest firehouse in the city at the time, and it was great. It was home. I worked most of my career 582 Communicore Avenue, and at one point we were the only occupied building on the block. Everything else was vacant.
You're on the engine or on the truck at that point?
On the engine. I stayed on the engine for a number of years. When I got a chance to cross over to cover a spot, I took it. I wanted to one broke, but I was an engine guy for probably the first 8 years. Loved it. Had a great crew. I had a couple real senior guys when I got there. It was like dual senior men. It was great. It was great. I mean, they were just, they were just an encyclopedia of knowledge about the area, about the buildings, about everything. About, it was back when you took care of the engine. The chauffeur would go underneath and let the air out of the air tanks if there was too much moisture in it. He checked the oil, all that stuff. He loved the chauffeur loved the engine, and he took care of it, cleaned it.
I love that old school, the pride in it, but so
Yeah.
it sounds like a super prideful city. And for the guys that don't know, especially a lot of our listeners are on the West Coast, Jersey City is extremely busy. With all that though, you were prior military and then you transitioned to the fire service. Was Jersey City very militaristic, or
Yeah.
were they gentler, kinder? And these are warriors. We're talking the
No,
70s
no,
and 80s, right?
yeah, this was it had all the military inflection that you could possibly think of. I mean, a lot of World War II guys left, a lot of Vietnam guys coming. One of the greatest chiefs in the history, my history with the Jersey City Fire Department, was a guy named John T. Mullins, ex-Marine. He looked like a fire chief, square jawed, big guy, gray mustache. If he came to a multiple, I wouldn't walk past him. I'd either go behind him or go across the street. I mean, that was his presence. He was the colonel. And you know
Mm.
what? We didn't talk to him. He would talk to the deputy, maybe battalion chief, but we had all that, all those guys. But one of my first captains was a B-24 pilot in World War II, and yeah, it was just that it was all there. Every company had that, and I liked it. You know, and I know I skipped over. Just getting back to the military, that's where I found the word brotherhood, the definition of it. When you're working with people and your life depends on it every day, that's brotherhood. When you see somebody save somebody else's life, when that gets into you and you say to yourself, "Hey, I got to help that guy out." I learned that you know, and they instill that in basic training. It's Fort Dix. We didn't do anything alone. Everything we did together. And if one guy did it wrong, you all did it wrong, and you all did it over again. If we were running and one guy got tired, we'd carry him. I mean, it was just I love that. I love all that. And you know, it carried over to Jersey City. But the brotherhood thing, before I learned about it, before I learned about um, you know, everything that's going on now in the fire service, everything I learned about the brotherhood and taking care of sitting with you or riding with you or crawling down the hallway with you. I learned in the service. I tried to teach that when I was an instructor in the fire academy for several years. And then when I became chief of training, I tried to instill that back into everybody. You know, we made squads. Well, they always had squads, a squad leader. If the squad leader didn't, I would just take his armband off. You're done. Back of the line and give it to somebody else. No questions asked. Don't even ask me. It was like that. And I'm glad. I'm glad I learned it in the military because I don't think I would have learned it as well. I would have learned it in the fire service, but the military just really taught me about how the importance of camaraderie, the importance of training together, the importance of knowing the mission, not varying from the mission. It just all those things I think transitioned to the fire service, and yeah, it might have disappeared for a little while, but I think it's coming back, and I think you know, I think the fools have a lot to do with it. I think you guys have re-energized, and you might ask me, well, why haven't you joined before? I didn't have any time. You know, when I had my training company, I was traveling all over the country, uh, you know, with a group of anywhere from 6 to 20 guys and girls, um, and we were just busy. I mean, you know, I didn't see my family. Sometimes I called my wife up and like, where am I going next? I forgot. You know, she looked at my calendar. You know, so I just didn't. I didn't have time for a lot of other things, and then I became the head of all the Firehouse Expo hands-on training, and that just added to my. I still was traveling with my company, but again, just getting back to the army, I give them the credit for really instilling brotherhood and what it meant, and I wanted that. I needed that in the fire service. I mean, we need it. If you can't trust, you know, if you don't trust the guy next to you, yeah, that's trouble. I mean, I still every guy that I work with that work for me or I work for actually nobody ever worked for me. We all work together. I never say that, hey, he worked for me. Uh, I work with him or we work together. But I still am in contact with all of them. You know, I'm the godfather to one of the guy's kids. You know, it never left. We see each other at different functions, and whenever my friends, you know, have their walkout when I retire, I fly back. I fly back. I want to be there for it. I want to be part of it. I was in a group of guys that was I'm not going to say any names, but young chief, and he gave this little dissertation at a meeting about how he was going to try when they're not at a fire having a rankless fire department. He said new kids were intimidated by what's on the collar. So he said around the firehouse they weren't going to wear rank anymore. And I was just, it was the last meeting I went to with this group. It was a pretty prestigious group, but it was the last meeting I went to because some of the guys in the group said, hey, that's a good idea. I mean, just to be nice, but you know what? I couldn't wait till the meeting ended, but insanity, insanity, rankless. But that was 8, 9 years ago when there were some guys out there with degrees and all these letters after their name that decided, let's try something new. But anyway, uh,
What's crazy though is just to kind of back up what you're saying, because I love the militaristic style in the firehouse. I believe it has a place for multitude different reasons. But with all that said, too, we for some reason there has been a wave, and I feel like we're starting to swing back some. But you alluded to it, where they were trying to eliminate that, reduce it, whatever the case might be, softer, kinder, gentler, whatever came across the table. But what we were seeing is with that kindler, gentler, a couple different things, right? Now these brand new individuals coming into the fire service have never been yelled at a day in their life because all their feelings matter. And then we as instructors are now told that you can no longer act like boot camp or militaristic style, and we're going to get in trouble if we holler at them and scream at them and everything else. And then we see this push that once it happens in the field, because everyone listening to this is on the job somewhere or was. So we know how controlled, chaotic scenes are, but they're chaotic. And the first time that kid gets screamed at by a civilian, right? The last thing I want him to do is to freeze. Or we are on that good job with known rescues, and there's no please, thank you, may you. I give you a direct order of where we're going. We are going to enter that window on the second floor, north side. Let's roll now. I don't need buts, whys, huhs. I don't need you to freeze. So that has a place in the American Fire Service. And I can't stand the fact that at any point that we are trying to eliminate that. But with that said, it's a hard fight now because we're trying to get back to where you were, like your war years. How is Jersey City now? Did they kind of dip down also, or are they still militaristic, hard charging, rank respecting, everything else?
everything you just said is Jersey City, and I'll tell you the reason why. And I know a lot of guys don't like this, but we never had a fire chief that I know of in the last 60 years, 70 years in Jersey City that didn't come from the ranks. We
Mm.
It was a chief of department is a civil service test. Well, you know what? You go to the assessment center, 4 or 5 parts, 2 days. Regardless of what you think about that, we never had a chief. You know what? Every chief from when I went on the job in '75 till yesterday, um, cut from the same piece of cloth. None of them want to see it digress. They want to keep what we have. I mean, when I tell you about things about Jersey City, I could 16, 17 square miles, 26 companies. They get like 33 firefighters on the first alarm. 4 engines, 2 trucks, the rescue, 2 chiefs. The mass service unit goes on the box with the safety. The safety officer goes on the box. We don't, you know, it's a whole thing we can get into. When I was traveling around the country with ISO, and I was saying, we follow the NFPA requirements. Not a big NFPA fan, but it says 16 on the first alarm for a structure fire. You only send an 8. What about the other 4 companies? Oh, well, we have to save them in case there's a second fire. Well, when's the last time we had 2 fires at the same time? Well, like in 1853, maybe. But I just don't understand that. Why wouldn't you? If you, the chief who I respect, tremendous chief, very smart, he went on automatic alarms. He would just send a pickup truck or any fire department vehicle, if there was an engine on it, a single response to an automatic alarm. Because he told me 86% of the time it's a false alarm. Well, what about the other time? What about the other 14%? You're putting your guys in danger. So in Jersey City, it's always been 2 engines in a truck and a chief on an automatic alarm. And if there's anything at all comes in and they fill out the box. But Jersey City's 4-2 to rescue, 2 chiefs, mass service unit, safety officer on the initial alarm. Because first engine gets there, nothing showing, return the blah blah blah. Then if you say working fire with a smoke showing, you get a squad, you get 2 rapid intervention teams and a squad.
Wow.
Pick up that. So and we have a great safety record. I want to knock wood. I usually don't like to say that. Really good safety record, but I think it's because we can overwhelm a fire. Number one, and number two, there's 3 chief officers, and a lot of firemen don't like this. I mean, well, but our guys don't get in the way. They let the officers and the firemen do their job. The safety officer's not running around, checking to see if your helmet straps. He's there to watch the building, learn from the building. What's it doing? What can he see that we can't see on the inside? So, and it's worked. It just worked really well. And more is better. More is better.
I'm a
Listen,
huge Yeah, I'm a huge fan of more is better. I had Mickey Farrell, FDNY lieutenant, truck
I know
lieutenant,
Mickey. Yeah,
right? And yeah, and he says the same thing. It was like we literally, like, I had a dude from city of Chicago too. They're like, we literally beat the fire out with manpower. And like I talk about all the time, the system here in the area that I work, I can get on the radio and I can request anything I want whenever I want, and I can get waves of guys for almost endless resources, but not on our initial assignments like you guys do, New York City does. I love the fact of, and literally they're like, you know what? If it's going south, we're going to throw more firemen in there. And and again, it kind of goes back to what I'm saying. If we're very aggressive in the beginning of the call, we usually deem the scene safe by pulling the fire out, pulling the people out, and then we're good, right? We usually don't get in trouble till we're at minute 15, 20, 25, and then we're calling in multiple alarms. Those are the guys that are going to get in trouble because now that structure is compromised, especially in today's day and age. But I love the fact that you guys operate very similar, it sounds like, to New York City. It's like we're just going to throw as many dudes there as we
yeah,
can.
absolutely. And it's always worked. I mean, as a battalion chief, if I got to work, I mean, and the dispatchers knew I was going to do this. I mean, they knew your habits, and the dispatchers are really good. But if a company got there and said working fire, I'd pull up behind them, I give a quick report, start an initial engine and truck. That's before they sent two rapid intervention in the squad. I would just say they knew if it was a working fire as soon as I got the extra engine and truck. I wanted somebody standing behind me, not doing anything. You can't have something go wrong and then say, oh, send this, that, and the other thing. But yeah, it's always worked for us. We've been in the shadow of New York City. I always say we're a small fire department because the closest fire department to us is 10,000 firemen on duty. And we actually do mutual aid with them, and we did in the tunnels. It's two subway tunnels from Jersey City over to Manhattan. One of them used to go, it still does. They rebuilt it right to the World Trade Center. There was a stop from Jersey City under the river that came up at World Trade Center. And then we have the 2 or 3 tunnels, freight train tunnels, and we did some training back and forth. But I guess being in their shadow was a good thing. They started rapid intervention. They started what's called the fast truck. We started it, and we could call and say, "Hey, show us some paperwork. Can you?" And I drive over and they give us the paperwork proving that that's what they need. So, it was good having them there. But we still were a small fire department with that shadow over there. But yeah, I love Jersey City, like I said, and it stayed that way. And again, I think it'll always be that way because the chief is always going to come. And if the mayor has to appoint somebody, we have, like, New York City has fire commissioners. Our fire commissioners are called fire directors, and he'll appoint anybody he wants. You can do that, but he can't do much to. He can cut the budget and whatnot, but you know what? Then he'd get in an argument with the fire chief, but he can't come to the fire scene and say anything. We give him a white helmet and a coat, and he can come and stand there. But there's some very specific laws of what the fire director or fire commissioner can and can't do. So, but we always got along. It's usually somebody retired from the fire service that was, that knew what was going on. So I like that part of it. Very traditional fire department, but very well trained. I'll tell you how well trained we are. We have a chief officer. There's 4 groups. We work 24 on, 72 off. Been doing that for 30 years, 40 years. Every group has what's called a FTO. It's a battalion chief, field training officer, works on shift, does nothing but train and document the training for all 130 guys on a shift, whatever it is. We have a training chief assigned to each group, and then there's a chief of training. But he has 4 more chiefs that he could go to and say, hey, what's going on in Group A? What's going on in Group B? So again, crazy. And they go to fires also. They'll start out for a working fire just as an extra set of eyes. But it was something that's probably only about 4 years old, but it's worked well, and everybody loves it. And again, pretty good safety record. Most of us hard charging, like you said. We're in interior firefighting. It was when I was there. It still is. I listen to the radio. You listen to everything now. And I still hear guys, one floor above the fire, primary search underway, and some places you don't hear that anymore. But
No, you're
good
you're
place to come
you're
from.
absolutely correct.
Yeah.
So
So
with
I was just fortunate. Um, you know, like I said, I stayed a fireman for a long time, and then I passed it. We had lieutenants and captains. We did away with lieutenants. The lieutenants sued the city, saying they were doing the same job as a captain. City said, okay. So all the lieutenants on a Friday became captains on Monday. It's kind of crazy, but
as a quick fix,
yeah. So anyway, yeah, I became a company officer. Went to engine 22, which was again really super busy. Made my way back to 20 engine and 582 Communicore Avenue with a different group of guys, but they just loved that spot. I knew it real well, and it helps to know the area. I mean, I don't care if you're a volunteer or career. You need to know your area. You need to know what's out there. You know, I tell volunteer chiefs when I speak to them all the time, you have 80 guys in your department. You should have 80 sets of slides on each one of those houses, from the outside, from the inside, if they let you, showing that generally one house looks in an older town or even a newer town, the houses all look the same. Builder came in World War II, built 100 houses. So I tell fire chiefs, have the firemen take slides, look at their house. How long is the stretch from the house? Where's the closest hydrant? What ladder? You know, put that together. Use it on drill nights when you can't go out, snow or rain or whatever. You have that whole. But I don't know how many of them listen to me. But nowadays, like where I live up here in Goodyear, when they put houses in, they put in like 50, 60, 75 at a time, and they're in stages. Framing, not framing, roof, and you could go all the way up from point A to point Z of how a house is built and what goes into it. It's nothing like walking around in a house that has no walls in it and looking at it. Where's the trouble start? Where are the spaces? So anyway,
no, it's good too because you live in the valley in Arizona, in a city called Goodyear, and Arizona or the valley is not old. Like 60s is like city of Phoenix, he's a little bit, but it's nothing like East Coast, Jersey, 1800s, stuff like that. So everything out here is new, and then it's just more and more and more. I mean, we take the recruits. Every single class goes through building construction where we do commercial units, but then we will find a stick farm neighborhood because, again, you can learn so much by looking at, hey, these are the houses we're building right now. These are our void spaces, right? This is where the AC ductwork goes. Here's your electrical. These are post tension. I mean, whatever. And then start looking at your stretches, how far your hydrants are, just starting to know those areas because we respond around here. It's automatic gate. So everyone goes everywhere. It doesn't matter what city a truck it is. You live in Goodyear, you might get a Buckeye, or even the next closest city to you just because depending on the day. But it's freaking awesome. So, but I love East Coast. I love the old school. I love the old school building construction and everything else. So you stayed a fireman for a long time. You promoted through the ranks, you be captain. So when did you decide to go chief, or was that one of those things where it was just for the betterment of the department at the time?
well, in 1990, we decided we had two rescues. They closed both of them, I think in 75, 76. They had to cut back. So we had rescue one, rescue two. They closed both of them, but they were more of a manpower squad. They would just kind of fly to fires, do their thing, get back on. There was no extrication back then. So in 1989 and 90, they decided to bring back Rescue One and make it a full heavy rescue, technical rescue, everything except diving. So myself and Captain Frank Bentavegna had the opportunity to put that together from scratch, and we did. And in '91, when it came online, I was fortunate. We have a bidding system. If you want to go to a company, you put a bid in, you get a point for every year you're on a job. But for the rescue, we decided, and the union agreed with us, and the city agreed. We took resumes. We didn't want to start with, so, and we were a lot of volunteer firemen in Jersey City. You had to be a resident to take the test, and 3 or 4 of them would get an apartment and live there for a year and qualified. But we had a lot of volunteer firemen, guys from other departments, and so we took resumes, and there was a lot of training that was kind of under the covers, and we put them, we assigned them. Each company, the rescue had a minimum of 5 for the rescue, an officer and 4. We wanted 6. The city wouldn't give in to the 6th guy. There's an interesting story about that. I have a picture of me standing in front of the rescue, with 4 firemen and myself 5, and a giant blow-up Gumby.
For man number 6.
Gumby went on every run with us until until the chief called the deputy called the battalion said to me, "Hey, Bobby, Gumby's gotta go," because he would hang out the way we'd pull up and he'd be hanging out the but you know what? Brotherhood.
Yeah.
So
One of the best parts of the job right there, just the cut them up and then doing fun, things just for you guys. You did it for you guys. So that's like the best part about it. Does Jersey City still have Rescue One, or do they have more now? Or did they get
no,
rid
they
of
have
it again?
Rescue One and they have 2 squad companies now that are, um, what we call rescue qualified. And they could do transfers into the rescue and whatnot, and anything technical. Squad 4 goes with the rescue. Squad 1 goes if needed. So there's 2 squads, kind of semi-rescue type of. They're all trained and they all have a specialty. Squad 1 is high-rise trained, but they have all other things. Squad 4 is in with the rescue. And they put them in with the rescue after a few years. So they go back and forth across the floor. So they get a regular fireman could go to squad 4, and the squad 4 guy would jump over to a vacation spot in the rescue. But so I was there for 6, 7 years, and I was no spring chicken, but it was the greatest 6 or 7 years of my career because we started out on the initial box and every box in the city. And being
Wow.
15 square miles, we got a piece of everything. If we were, yeah, I'm telling you, it was, any of my guys will tell you, it was on each group. It was a lot of fun, a lot of work. We trained every single day, even though we had a lot of qualified guys. Quick story, we trained so much in the rescue, day and night, for everything, that the union called me one day and said, "Hey, we got to figure something out with the overtime," because the overtime rule was one of the dispatches, or back then the battalion chief's aides would call for overtime. And some guys would take the rescue. It was an overtime slot, but if it got down to the last guy and they said, "Oh, you have 14 hours in the rescue," and he would turn it down. And a couple of guys called the union and said, that shouldn't be they shouldn't be offering a regular fireman that spot. Because the thing was, we had 4 of the 5 had to be qualified in the rescue. And then one guy could, come over and hang out with us. But guys complained because we'd go out at 9 o'clock in the morning. I'd call on the radio, the rescue one's on the air, and the dispatcher would say, "Okay, rescue, you're on patrol." Because we would go to every junkyard there was. The Department of Public Works would publish vacant buildings that the city owned that were going to get torn down. Um, so they were the free for all. Any company in the city could use them. Every morning we'd get up, do our housework, have a cup of coffee, and then on the road, vacant building, 2 or 3 junkyards, pull out some cars, trucks. The cops were really good. They ran those, and they would pile cars on top of one another, etc. We go to vacant buildings, and every day and every night we come back, we'd eat, BS a little bit, back out, go to fires at night, and we were out all the time. We wanted to hone our skills. We wanted to be good at what we did. Engines would volunteer, where we take an engine with us. We wanted to do everything, but some guys wouldn't come and work with us. They want to be. That was fun. And working 24 hours, we were doing. They cut back on some of the runs. We were going crazy at the beginning. We were going anything 4-2, anything that 4-2 and 4-2 and 2 Chiefs went to. They put us on, but we were going to. Box came in high school at 3 o'clock in the morning. It was 4-2 to rescue with 2 Chiefs. So we kind of cut back. Elevator emergencies. We eventually trained most of the truck companies in elevator emergencies more than more than they knew. Got all the equipment so they could take some of the slack off us. And God forbid we missed the fire. So that's. But I was getting older. And, later in your career, I started thinking about my pension, started thinking about my family. It was a big jump from firefighter to captain, and from captain to battalion chief. So I started studying for the battalion chief's test, and I took it, not expecting much, but they needed probably 8 battalion chiefs at the time. I came out 3 on the list. I kind of got my choice of where I wanted to go. Went to the 2nd Battalion, which is the south end of the city, it was the busiest end of the city. Went to house an Engine 19, Engine 8. I just can't say enough about Jersey. Engine 19, Ladder 8, Tony Della Rosa, who became a deputy chief eventually, he was the captain of the engine. Captain Gill was on the truck. And you know what? I had one meeting, and all my meeting was, listen, every day we're on duty, I need to hear, and I took my whole battalion, small battalion, but I said to him, listen, I just need to hear you on the air training. I don't care if he went to a vacant building or threw ladders on a firehouse, get on the radio and say, we'll be delayed, we're out training. Or if you're doing something, just call me and let me know you're going to be off duty for a few hours. But I said, we'll get along really well. And they loved it. They loved it. They loved me going to it and watching, never criticized. I did stuff in the firehouse. I brought the rescue down. We did, back when we got into search ropes and things like that and rapid intervention. So it was a great time. I had great officers. Time went by. I was having a ball. It was great. And then, volunteered to go to training at school. And then the deputies test came up. I studied a little bit, not a lot. Not a lot, because I knew what would happen. Most of the deputies, when you got promoted, you went to fire headquarters probably for a year or two or 3 or 4, because there were 5 spots going on the line. Each shift had their own deputy. He worked 24 on, 72 off. He was called Prince of the City. And there was a 5th deputy who was called the covering deputy, because generally one of them was out for something. So all the chief's positions with deputy chiefs positions, mostly, I think we had like 12 deputy chiefs on our department. But I took the test and somehow or another it came out 2. You know what? I don't know if it was good at BSing or whatever, but Mike Turpak, I don't know if you've ever heard of Mike Turpak. He's read a few books and wrote a few books and does a lot on the road. But anyway, he came out 1, I came out 2. The 2 spots were open were chief of training. He took that, and chief operations, which is normally the number 2 chief. But the union contract says you can't be forced into a staff position if you have a line position. So Chief Eggers, Rick Eggers, who again was one of the greatest chiefs we ever had, he went around to all the senior deputies and said, listen, I need to fill the chief operations spot. They all turned it down until they got to me. And the contract said if everybody turns it down, then the junior person takes that spot. So I wound up the chief operations as the junior deputy chief, had a city car. I had a key to all the gas tanks. It was pretty cool. I took it home, responded to all the multiple alarms. They would call me and I responded. It was good because I got to see a part of the department I hadn't seen before, didn't care to see before, but I still got to go to every multiple alarm, every odd tactical rescue. I could go to anywhere I wanted, really. A couple times I went to like an all hands fire that deputy would, chief operator would never go to, but one of my friends, like Pete Greasy, came out of the rescue with me, was a battalion chief. I would just show up and he'd go, what are you doing here? I wasn't doing much in the office. I'd pat him on the back, but Rick Eggers was a great chief, got a lot done. We got our first bailout equipment, and he gave me a kind of a long leash to buy things and do things the department needed. So it was pretty interesting. And I think I
That's a
told you, go ahead.
it's amazing because it's odd to me to hear all these senior deputies turn a spot down, because to me, I would think that would be a prized spot, because you literally have your finger on the department, on how they operate on working fires, which I would believe would be a dream job for any real fireman coming up through the ranks. I can't believe that he even got to you. So it's like, just being in that position, you got so lucky to be there, but then you get to capitalize on all the benefits of literally, because I know if I ever made that position one day, which would be a dream come true, I would show up on 3-in-1 house fires just to hang out with the boys and see them work. It's see how my city or my department's running, and then I can freaking tweak it as needed. Like when we're talking about how much manpower goes on an assignment and everything else. What a freaking awesome spot to jump into.
I never went to a working fire as a deputy chief operations on duty. Never. I'd never do that. I'd go fooling around for one of my friends, but never went. There was no need. Now, if you're a deputy chief and you got 28 years on the job, 22 years, would you want to work Monday to Friday? And most of them didn't live in the city. They lived down in South Jersey or North. Do you want to work 24 on, 72 off? Or do you want to work 5 days a week in the office?
I got you. Yeah, they want the schedules. They want that 24/72.
Absolutely. And I said to Chief Eggers, the first spot that opens up, I'm gone. And he knew it. And the first spot opened up, went to Mike Turpak. He left chief of training. Until the end of my career, I got a couple spots on the line. As soon as I had an opportunity, I left chief operations. And, I don't know if there was a junior deputy to me at the time, but if the spot opened up earlier, I would have left. But I had a good friend, Timmy Carney, who was a deputy chief. He spent almost 6 years, and he just died of cancer. God rest his soul. From 9/11. He was over 9/11, and he died of one of those cancers. A great guy, but he spent almost 6 years at fire headquarters. as chief operations. It's great, but it is. But you kind of separated. The last thing I thought about was strategy and tactics out of fire. The last thing I thought about. If I went to a multiple, you know what it was? It was if the press showed up, the councilman showed up. That's what I did because the deputies that were there at the time, they were well schooled. They were good at what they did and needed me like a hole in the head. So that's just Jersey City. I mean, even the bigger cities, you see, they go to the scene. Even in New York City, you may get a deputy, you may get a deputy assistant chief, but they're kind of in the background. Everything's being done by the original chiefs that were there. So that's how I felt about it. But it was interesting. I learned a lot about the job. But again, it just and I think I told you, I took the chief of departments test again. Didn't want to study for it. I came out 2 on the list, and Michael Riley became the chief, and he came down after I was on the line, and he came and he got me a spot on the line. So I was working 24 on 72 off, and he came down one day and he goes, "Listen," he goes, "I'm not enjoying myself." He said, "I'm going to retire pretty soon." He said, "It'll be all yours." I never let that happen. Just before that happened, I retired. I just decided. Well, I had an offer from a company outside, but I was 60 years old, and it just. Yeah, we're not getting into too much of it. Jersey City is a very political city, and I saw 2 chiefs before me just kind of get beat up, and I was done. I was done. I wasn't a political figure, and I probably would have got fired if I became the fire chief. So I didn't want to take any chance, but I left for another job. But I did the right thing, and coincidentally, because there was some talk about, and we never, I've never, I was one of the last guys to retire with all my medical benefits. I don't pay a dime for medical benefits
Mm.
and other things in my pension. And 6 other deputies retired in the year or 2 after I did, all with 30 years. So, you're talking, including me, over 200 years of experience walked out the door in 3 years. That's incredible, right?
That's a lot leaving all at once. And I kind of feel like that's becoming a new norm in the fire service
Yeah.
because we've had all these hiring spikes and we're in transition now where there's a bunch of senior members leaving. So we have a lot of younger suppression officers moving up through the ranks, which is not a bad thing. But again, it's just a lack of experience thing, or maybe an outside knowledge thing where they're only ingrained in their little bubble. So but I think that's just American Fire Service. We go through these massive waves of losing a ton of experience, and then a bunch of hard chargers coming up, but then they're all coming up at the same time. So then their 200 years leaves 30 years later or whatever.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it,
Well, no,
yeah,
to me, it's all about something I wrote about, and I'm going to speak about at the New York State Chiefs. It's called "Follow the Leader, Lead the Followers." And what I mean by that, just really shortly, is when you first come on the job, pick somebody, pick one of the leaders, lieutenant captain, pick somebody that you look at and say, "Oh, I'd like to be him someday," and just kind of follow his lead. So follow that leader, learn from that leader, ask him questions because you're confident that you're going to get the right answer. And it's not everybody, but follow somebody. I don't care how big or small your department is. Your volunteer department, there's somebody there that just keys you that he knows what he's doing, and he's the guy. He's my go-to. So follow the leader. Now, if you're a leader, you also always talk about following and leading, 2 sides of the same coin. You could be a captain, get in first due to a fire, all right? You're kind of leading this, all right? You got your company, you're getting on a radio, you're assigning a ladder, whatever you're doing. Battalion chief shows up. What are you now? You're not the leader anymore. Now you follow his command. You follow his strategy, his tactics, all right? And now you're back in with your company leading the followers. So, you know what I'm saying? Leading and following are the same side of one coin. But you become a captain, find that battalion chief, find that guys that everybody talks about, that the senior guys, he's a great boss. I want him in my, follow him on your shift, see what he does. Why does everybody like him? What does he do that's good? Ask guys, what makes him special? Follow that as you become a battalion chief. The next rank, you want to become a deputy or whatever the rank is in your department. I don't care if it's volunteer career. Who's the guy everybody likes? Who's the guy everybody says, boy, I want him outside the building before I run in it? You know what? And follow him. So regardless of your rank, you're going to lead and sometimes you're going to follow, but you have to be good at both of those. And that's what bothers me about taking somebody from the outside. He's followed no one in your department. Even I see some departments, When I got done with Jersey City, there was some thought about being a chief. I put my resume in. I even went to an interview in Florida, and it just dawned on me what I did in Jersey City is not going to work. It's just, and I decided right away I can't go anyplace else. No, nobody else. I just couldn't do it. So I went with Burris Analytics and Insurance Service Office, which was a great move. But leading and following is your whole entire career. You know what? Don't invent being a leader. Somebody has done it well and is going to do it better than you. Follow that. To me, it's just all part of maturing in the fire service, following and leading in every rank. So that's my spiel on that. I don't see it happening as often as it should. I wish you couldn't take a test as early as you can in New Jersey. I think it's after 3 years because there's some bright kids out there that, get into this assessment center. I had a guy I was friendly with from another department. He made captain really young. And he said, well, listen, when I get there, I'm just going to tell them, you guys are all senior to me. And I said, that's a bad way to get started. Kind of saying, oh, I'm going to follow you, but I'm getting paid. So I made him change his mind a little bit. I said, he was a little skeptical, but so I just wish they would change it. Yeah, maybe after 5 or 6 years. But you know what? The bad side of being a veteran, you could take a promotional exam in Jersey City after 1 year. I don't know anybody.
Wow.
I don't know anybody that's ever done it, but it's there in writing. So that would scare the hell out of me.
Yeah, that would be so. I mean, with the young officers coming into the rank and everything else, we had talked offline a little bit about standards in the American Fire Service, and then holding guys accountable, either individual crew members or maybe even other companies that you're responding with. So, what do you? Again, your personal opinion, what do you feel like we need to fix? What's the issue, if there is any, in the American Fire Service right now when it comes down to accountability? Because that's always a hot topic word, especially when we're talking about leadership. So what's your take on that, Chief?
I don't know if this is the right direction you want me to go in, but one of the things, including myself, for a lot of years, we have seen mistakes made and let it slide. We've seen officers make mistakes. We've seen whole companies make mistakes, or whole companies decide, I'm not doing that, let somebody else do it, and we don't do anything about it. There's no accountability for that. And I think sometimes we misinterpret the brotherhood part of it. Just because he worked with me and he's part of the brotherhood, I don't want to get him in trouble. And I'll give you an example, and I did nothing about this. We get up to the northern part of the city pretty quickly. A 3-story brick fire on the top floor. We get in really quick. We split up. One guy goes to the roof alone. Not good, but I'll explain that later. I trusted my guy explicitly. 2 of us would take the fire floor, 2 to the floor above if that was needed. So the 3 of us, because it's the top floor, we go to the top floor. There's an engine at the top of the stairs, fires out of the apartment into the hallway. And the captain turns to his guys and says, the rescue's here, give him the line.
What?
It's funny, and I let it slide. I tell that story as a proud story, but you know what? I should have went to the battalion chief after the fire and said, what the F? This shithead is up there with his guys hunkered down and gives me the line.
Yeah.
But you know what? I didn't do anything about it. The battalion chief might have just scolded him, because that would cause for somebody to get written up and maybe lose a few days' pay or more. And so I let that slide, but that happened in more than one place. We get up to the roof, and I had this guy, Lenny Ribicki, one of my main guys, him and Pete, and I go through all these names, but Lenny was good with the saw. That was his nickname, Lenny the Saw. Lenny could dismantle the saw, put it back together on the roof. Lenny would go to the roof, and guys would say, "Hey, let him cut." But you know what? It's things like that. I mean, there's other things. I saw there was a truck company by us once that they had trouble getting the aerial up at a fire. The word got down to the chief, and the chief, without slapping anybody, took all the guys who settled into these 2 companies, 6 or 7 firemen and the 2 officers, and transferred them all out. And the union could have fought it, but there was something in the union contract and the rules that say, for the betterment of the department, the chief can, and nobody argued him. He just split them all up, put them in other places, and hopefully they got retrained. But you can't not know how to put the aerial up. I mean, so there's things like that. It goes on all the time. It went on in my volley department. It went on in Jersey City. As I traveled the country, I went to some fires and ones that You look at all the videos. How many guys are standing there, and how many guys take 2, 3 minutes to get their mask on? They're guys that, you know what? They need somebody to get in there and start water, and then they'll go in and get their helmet dirty and their face. You know, you see it, but I we need to do more accountability. We don't have most departments, other than in New York, doesn't have enough manpower. You can't have a guy or two not doing his job. I tried to fire a guy for being a coward at a fire that killed a woman. A
What's that story?
wind driven fire, second due engine of a really good engine company. I don't know how he was working there, but um, the safety chief, Pete Greasy, worked in a rescue with me. I was the deputy. Pete Greasy he goes to do his 360. He comes back. He's got this kid by the collar, and he says to me, "Chief, I found him in the backyard." I said, "What the fuck? Oh, sorry, what the f?" And the kid says to me, "Oh, I was going to give you a report." He's on a second due engine and a wind-driven fire on the top floor. When they opened up the front door, the smoke came out like a locomotive. You had to put your mask on before you went to get to the third floor. He got in there. I don't know where he went. And I hammered the officer. We had a little chat with him in the battalion. I hammered the officer, but the officer said, the smoke was thick the second we got there. But you're not hanging on to it. Assumed he was humping holes with them, but they needed the second line badly. Now, they got up there with the line without this guy, but I had the battalion chief write him up. I wrote him up for Calvinist. I want him fired, and the legal department said no. But that made me rethink things a little bit because I didn't have the final say, and the chief backed me up. But weren't firing this guy. That was a bad image for the legal department, and they gave me like 5 reasons, and But anyway, just getting back to accountability, not just where you are, who you are, but accountability on who you are. One of the things I used to do that guys didn't like was a pain in the ass. If I was standing in front of a fire building and a fireman walked by me or was headed out by himself, I'd grab him. Who are you with? And he'd tell me. And he said, I'm just changing my bottle. Okay. But, if he didn't have, the guy walked by me and I said to him, who are you with? And he'd tell me, I said, where are they? Yeah, I'm not sure, Chief. Hey, write his name down. Yeah, it's got to be accountability when you're inside the building, and as long as the officer knew he was going to change his bottle, fine. But I was a stickler on that. But things change when you stand out in front of a building.
Yeah, it's a completely different lens that those guys don't have yet because they've never been in that position, in your position. So it's one of those things where they're always talking, at least now in today's day and age, especially the American Fire Service, they're like, hey, know the roles and responsibilities of the guy above you. So for me as a captain, it would be a battalion chief. And that's exactly why they say that, because when he makes a decision and if I'm interior going, what the fuck, we got this, right? And he's pulling us out for whatever reason, I know for a fact he's doing it to save my ass because there's something that I can't see, or there's conditions that change, wind change direction, right? Whatever it is, but knowing that position above you is key. Again, this is my personal opinion, American Fire Service, for reasons like that, because without that lens, you're just thinking the battalion's being an asshole or whatever the case might be.
Yeah, one of the first fires, I was down at south end of the city, and we get this fire in a vacant building, lots of vacant buildings. But you know what? Every building in Jersey City was occupied, and this is just me speaking. Every building in Jersey City was occupied until we went inside and said it wasn't. Period. I don't want to hear probably vacant. You know what? We had people living in these buildings. We gave food to people living in vacant buildings. That was the whole department was like that. So we get into this fire, 22 engine with Jimmy Farrell, who top of the list of captains. Stated captain, never want to be much. Engine 22, towel out of 4. In the great firehouse. Firehouse was built in 1893 and it's still being used. Yeah.
So cool.
Oh God, yeah. On a really humid day, you can still smell the hay and the horse manure up in the loft. Jimmy gets in with his crew, and they're doing their thing, and I'm standing there. It's my first really good fire. This vacant building. It's out 3 or 4 windows, and blah blah blah. And then finally, I called dispatch. I said, "Listen, sound the evacuation tone and let everybody out." So little by little, they're coming out. Last company out is 22 engine, and I know Jimmy a long time. He's walking by me, and big smile on his face. He goes, "Chief." I go, "Yeah, Bill. Yeah, Cap." He said, when you were in the rescue, you wouldn't have come out."
And he's right.
Yeah, he was. He was. But you know what? It was a learning experience for me. You know what? I learned I learned for things like that. You can't err on the safe side all the time, but it was always, you know, they can build primary searches. I think the first two medals I got on Medal Day, going back a million years ago, were one dragging a homeless guy out of a basement, and the other one pulling another guy out of a second floor above a store, um, vacant. So that's cement. If you go to Jersey City, they'll tell you that. Any guy right now, you go there and they'll tell you there's no building in the city with somebody's not living in it. In our
Yeah,
mind.
and I'll tell you what, the boys in Detroit say the same thing. They're like, just because they're not paying taxes
Yeah.
doesn't mean there isn't somebody living in there. They don't have electricity or water. He's like, but it doesn't mean that someone's not in there. And I agree with you, because how did the fire start? It's not mice with matches. So it's somebody's probably in there, and I wholeheartedly believe that we should occupy every single structure that we are reported to on a fire to do exactly that. Get a
Yeah.
primary all clear, then we can come out and say, hey, boss, there ain't nobody in there. We can let that building go, right?
Yeah, primary
But
search. I mean, I I did a primary search once. The Proud nephew rescue. Chief Eggers was third alarm. No, he was a deputy. It was the second alarm. But we get in right away with the rescue. We do a primary search. I get on the radio. Primary search negative. We come out to take a blow, and one of the companies says, "Hey, we got a guy up on the second floor." And the chief looks at me like, "What?" I said, "Oh shit." So anyway, but we found out later, the guy was on the first floor, which we searched the floor above the fire. Fire was on the first floor. He left the first floor, went out to back up the fire escape into the second floor, and that's what they told. I was off the hook for that because it wasn't the floor.
oh,
So, but yeah, shit happens like that. And yeah, one of the things that not getting off the track here. I was out in San Francisco not too long ago, and they made a comment about there's some fire departments when you take the oath and it says to save lives and protect property. I've seen fire departments, they need to take out the part that says, well, they can leave in save lives, take out the part that says protect property. So I've seen fire departments just go to the outside right away and like not care, just it's gonna go, it's beyond our capabilities, and it burns to the ground and maybe get into the exposure. But I've seen some fire departments that should take that out of their oath. Really. It's just it really bothers me. But yeah, again, I've traveled to every piece of the United States when I was working for ISO, but I was all over the country with my training company. I think we were one of the first training companies that got invited, and this is in the 90s, I guess, that we got invited to California to put on some training programs. And it was by two deputies from LA County. The funny thing, the first thing that happened was when we got there was this guy came up to me and said, you guys can't be the lead instructors. And I said, well, we got hired to, and he said, nope, you have to be a certified California fire instructor. So I went to the deputy that hired us, and he said, oh, no, no. So he had a couple guys with the certificates, and they became the lead, but we couldn't, even though we've done it like 1,000 times in 30 states. But we got introduced to California, and they did just like us in most of the places. And I did that in LA County, and there were a couple other companies in California that hired us to come out. We were big on search and rescue. We were big on search ropes. Before Worcester, before any of the multiple life of law, light on duty deaths, before they happened, and we in Jersey City went to search ropes early on, and it's just
what was the when did you leave? When did you retire from Jersey City, boss?
oh, let me just think for a minute. No, sorry, leave right back. It's 2009.
2009. So the reason I asked is because part of your bio was 9/11 responders. So you had said prior in the beginning when we started talking, Jersey City actually ran mutual aid with New York City. So was that a response on the initial day, or was that during the rescue efforts after? If you don't mind, just kind of tell the audience your piece of 9/11, sir.
We got called for mutual aid to ground zero right after the second plane hit. And we sent over Johnny Austin was the 3rd Battalion chief. He went over with the safety officer. Our mutual aid response, because every department in Hudson County called us for mutual aid. We were such a big department. We could send you 4 engines, 2 trucks. So, but our mutual aid response was the battalion chief and the safety officer would go with our guys if they were going to the job. If they're relocating, it's different. You were going to the fire in another community, even though it was New York City, our policy was battalion chief and the safety battalion went. And he went over and they asked for a masked service unit because everybody now we work not only with New York City Fire Department, we work with the Port Authority Police and Emergency Services. They had that kind of like a mini fire department. We trained with them. They bought us equipment. We trained them. They trained us. In the tunnels, we needed to learn about the tunnels. They were a whole different animal. So we trained with Port Authority. So they asked for a mass service unit. We had a big truck, carried, I don't know, 70, 80 bottles, and it got within a couple hundred yards of the North Tower and started giving out bottles. And, the original 1, 2, 3, 5 guys from Jersey City on mutual aid survived the collapse of the South Tower. Now they were parked by the North Tower. South Tower collapsed. They made it through that. Gave a report back that there was an explosion because you couldn't comprehend. And I know Johnny Austin, a senior battalion chief, you could not comprehend that the building fell down. So he gave an explosion. Again, they were parked close to the North Tower, giving out the bottles. When the North Tower collapsed, like everybody else, they took off running north, and it collapsed. And I have some pictures of a truck sandwiched between an engine and a ladder truck of New York City. Blew the lights off it, and I have pictures of windshields blown out of fire trucks and light bars blown off fire trucks because the wind it created when it went down. I don't want to get into too many details, but so they survived the second. Before that happened, Chief Austin had called for dust masks and sterile water because nobody could see. Their eyes were all. And my chief had just gave me a department vehicle. I was a battalion chief at the time. I just gotten off duty. I went to fire headquarters when it started, and the chief said to me, go to the command post. Most of the chiefs over there, Ray Downey, God rest his soul. Ray helped train all the special operations people in Jersey City, in New York City, trench collapse, building, whatever he had, he would call and say, I got 3 openings, I got 5 openings, I got 4 openings. To this day, I don't know if it was official or not, but we got everybody trained thanks to Chief Downey. And I work with him at Firehouse Magazine and hands-on training, etc. So anyway, so I was supposed to go over, got delayed going over, putting equipment and whatnot, got delayed at the Holland Tunnel because the Port Authority police were locked and loaded. They were in flak jackets, long guns, short guns, you name it, they had it, and they weren't going to let me go through. So I got delayed. They let me go through eventually, but they said to me, they're waiting for the bomb dogs. I said, all those bombs are here, there, and everywhere. So they said, the bomb dogs haven't gone through the tunnel. You can go through. You'll be the only car there. Straddle the center line and go as fast as you can. So we did. Gil Turner was a captain in training. He drove me. If anybody knows the Holland Tunnel, when you get to the end of the sharp right turns down to West Street, so we kind of skidded around and we may have touched the wall a few times. I said to Gil, we hit the wall. I said, Gil, that never happened. We got to West Street, made the left, couldn't go any further with 10,000 people in the street. I was calling my guys, but what had happened in the delay, I didn't get to the command post. And when the North Tower fell, it killed every chief officer, every staff chief in New York City Fire Department got killed, and every staff chief in the Port Authority Police Department, they were all in one spot, and they all got killed. I didn't know that until later on. But I think about that every morning when I get up. I thank God I got delayed because I was going to look for Chief Downey. I was going right to the command post. I couldn't find it. Eventually, one of the guys said it's over here, and it was just a pile of rubble. And I spent myself, Gil Turner, and the other 5 guys. We spent 12 hours there, and a 2-star chief came. I think it was the training chief. He got the kids in the command system back up and running within an hour or 2. I know you read stuff that said took 2 days, 3. They had it going in an hour or 2. This guy was sending runners out. What's left here? What's left there? Writing down who's calling on the radio, where you are. They started reorganizing really quickly, and we were there when Building 7. I had taken the rescue came over with a couple other companies because eventually the chief in charge said to me, Bobby, he said, send anything you can that'll cut metal because they were beyond their capabilities. So that's what we did. And we didn't do one thing. The first 2 days, we didn't do one thing if we weren't with an FDNY officer. No freelancing. And I'm not saying anybody did. I'm just saying what we did. When we got an assignment, a lieutenant or a captain went with us to where we had to work. We did that work, went back. made our own changes. We went back and forth we had a tugboat bringing over, supplies and whatnot. So we were there for about 12 hours. When our crews first got there, my friend Pete Gracie was the captain in the rescue then. He was the fireman with me. He was now the captain of the rescue, and we walked around Building 7 like 3 times. Fire out 6 windows, 12 windows, 20 windows, 30 windows, 4 and finally, the New York City Fire Department was smart enough, they got somebody there to engineering, and they put their equipment on the walls, and finally they said, "It looks like it's moving a little bit." Gil Turner and I were in the, lobby helping people out at the very beginning out of Building 7. So everybody got away. They went around with loudspeakers, got everybody back. Building 7 fell, and it fell in the only spot it could fall without hitting another building or any people. Just went down. An hour later, it was like it never happened. We just walked by it like it never happened, and it was like really the 3rd high rise in the history of the fire service, in the history of the world, to fall from fire. And there's a lot of other stories. I had a 2 cops grabbed me right away when I first got there by the shoulder and said, "You got to come with us. We got to report bombs in the hell's a school that was right across from the North Tower. It was a high school. Yeah, I should remember all this, and I don't." These 2 cops said to me, "Chief, there's bomb," and I'm thinking to myself, I know a lot about the fire service. I know nothing about bombs. And they dragged me over to the school. I got there, but most of the kids had left. I think it was Johnny Tripp and the other guys from Jersey City. They got a lot of the kids out the back and then walked them up the Hudson River north. There was a group of kids that wouldn't leave the auditorium. And I went with the 2 cops and explained to them, "Listen, the worst is over. You go out the back and blah, 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 blah." And then, the kids left. But the whole time I was panic stricken until I got to the school. Now they're talking about bombs. And then later on, they were talking about there were snipers in the upper buildings. It was just calamity at the beginning for a while, but we got through it. They did about 12 hours, and finally we went back and one member of the Jersey City Fire Department, Joseph Lavero, he was a uniformed fire dispatcher. He couldn't get on the fire department because he had a heart ailment. His brother and I went on the job, so he gave him a fire dispatcher. But they were uniformed; they were part of the fire department. He got killed over there. And if anybody ever go over there and sees that waterfall that goes, every fireman, police officer that got killed is on a plaque over there, and it says Jersey City Fire Department Joseph Lavero. So he got killed that day. He got hit with a piece of the North Tower. A couple guys from New York City managed to get him out of the rubble, dragged him a couple blocks, got him into an abandoned ambulance, brought him to St. Vincent's emergency room. He was only one of 4 people brought to the emergency room. And one of the doctors said there were 2 types of people came in, like, hurt really bad or dead. There was no in between. So there were 4 people got brought in. He was one of them. He died in the emergency room before they could get him into surgery. So I mean, his name is officially there. He's officially listed in Jersey City as a not line of duty, but he did get something from the federal government because of his attachment to the fire service. But yeah, he was helping. A New York City battalion chief, New York City captain. They were trapped in the rubble, and we have the tape of the captain saying, "Listen, I got this." He says, "I got this Jersey City battalion chief here. He's really hurt bad. I can't get out of the rubble." And they eventually pulled them all out. The reason he said he was a battalion chief is in his wallet he had a honorary battalion chief's badge that we give to people to help. But the funny, not funny at the time, but he was built just like me, same size, same height, same
Okay.
goal. And when they said we got this battalion chief, people assumed that it was me because John Austin, the other battalion chief, was like 6'2", full head of hair. But they eventually found out it was him. One last thing and it's the only thing I think that I think back on that makes me feel good because I was so depressed. I couldn't do anything. 50 times New York City firemen came up to me. I was the only white helmet there for a while. 50 times New York City guys would come up to me, "Chief, what do you want us to do?" And I said to them, "Listen, I'm a battalion chief from Jersey City." I said, "But EMS is setting up a triage area, and I think your guys are setting up a command post up at the school up on West Street, not Western Vesey. It was Manhattan Community College." I said, "Take your guys up there. Half of them were bleeding and hurt." I said, "EMS has got triage going up there and blah, blah, blah." I kept saying it over and over and over again, but I couldn't. It's the only thing I could tell them. I couldn't tell them and and it was like nobody was asking about the guys that were trapped. It was eerie. It was, I think a shockwave took over everybody at the site. So I was almost embarrassed to have a white helmet on because of that. But years later, I had a guy call me and say, if you didn't get me to up there, he said I would never. It was his son had just graduated college or high school, and he said to me, if you didn't do that for me, I would have never saw my son graduate. And this was the guy who was bleeding from the head, he was bleeding from everywhere, and he wouldn't get up. He was like 3 blocks from the North Tower. He wouldn't get up. One of the firemen said, "You're a chief. Order him." I said, "I am from Jersey City." He goes, "He's not going to know." And we did that. We ordered him. Get up and go with your guys, not asking, telling. And he looked up, blood in his eyes, and he got up and he went. So anyway, but one of the things I'm sort of proud of, I'm proud of my fire department because 6,000 survivors of those collapses went across the river by boat and met Jersey City cops and firemen and EMS and took care of them. But anyway, Chief Eggers called me a couple times and he said, "Bobby," on the radio, he said, "walk somewhere where your cell phone's working." I got to a spot and he gave me a list of like 7 or 8 guys, names, badge numbers, companies. And he says, "They're all in Jersey City hospitals being taken care of." Went to the command post and said to the captain, I said, "I got to talk to the chief. This 2-star chief running." And the chief says, "I got no time for you." I said to the captain, "Listen, these are your guys. They're in the Jersey City hospital." Told the deputy, whatever, I didn't even know what rank he was. And he said to me, "Come up here." And he looked at it and I said, "They're all alive. They're all being treated. They all have a union member with them. They're calling their loved ones, telling them they're okay." I said, "We can't get them anywhere because everything's closed." And he just looked at me and he goes, "How'd they get there?" And you know what? I said, "I don't know. I wasn't thinking about the river. I wasn't thinking about boats. I didn't know there was like 500 boats in this flotilla put together by the Coast Guard taking 6,000 people." So that happened 2 or 3 times. I went back and, then, finally when I was leaving, the guy just turned to me and he said, "You know what? The only little bit of hope that I had was you showing up with this piece of paper from your notebook." And I think about that because the rest of it is just, it's kind of like, and I'm sure you've run into this. I wish I could have done that over, but
Mm,
you don't know what you don't know. You could be prepared for a lot of things, but who could be prepared for 2 giant high rises collapsing within minutes of,
nobody.
and a third one? And you know what? So I guess ordering them or getting them back to EMS was the start of doing something. But then we searched around. Our guys were there for days. But again, we went over as a group. Always got an assignment and did it. So that's a story about 9/11. It was. I'm proud of my department, and we do what we were told to do, and the rest is kind of history.
Yeah, that's something, and it again, like you're saying, hey, you don't know, you don't know, and that's why it is important to listen to the guys tell stories, right? Why we have podcasts and things like that, because a young guy listens to your story, 20 years from now, there's some sort of catastrophic event. At least he has heard a story about the worst ever or the largest rescue ever, the most successful rescue ever
Absolutely,
in the history of the
absolutely.
American Fire Service, because that's truly what it is. But again, if we don't tell the stories and let them die with us, we're not doing the future of the American Fire Service any good at all. And like you said, you don't know what you don't know, but the only way you can learn, if you haven't experienced yet, is hopefully listen to a guy that went through that and say, "Hey, man, if I could do it all over, this is what I would probably do," you know?
Yeah, we don't talk enough about the search and rescue effort that New York City made. If you those buildings had enough people in them that are bigger than some of the cities that are in your state or in your area. I mean, you're talking about thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of people, you know, in these, and a lot of these guys, I'm sure, knew they weren't coming back. Once they started up there, I think they knew, they weren't coming back. I just, some of them had to think that, but never hesitated. Going up, people screaming out. It's just, it's miraculous. It needs to be talked about more. And I'm not blowing my own whistle, but I have a program called "Never Forget Means Never Forget," and it's the other side of the river. It talks about Jersey City's contribution to what we did over there, and I've done it all over the country, from the FBI to the DEA, to the Delta Chi fraternity, the convention. I recently did it. I think I told you last year. A teacher came to me in the state of Arizona, by law, on 9/11 or close to 9/11, if it lands on a weekend, every teacher from first grade up to high school has to talk an hour and a half about 9/11 and what happened. And I helped a little bit with the curriculum, and then teachers started asking me. And I said, get the principals okay, get the board of eds okay. I put a program together for kids, and I've done probably 30 or 40 schools from high school. I did 125 fourth, fifth, and sixth graders a couple of years ago. I was never so scared my whole life. But you know what? And I always tell the school, invite the parents. I want the parents there with their kids if they can make it. And every parent that has come up to me said, you know, if I didn't see that, I would have never known what happened. And the last thing I did with these fourth, fifth, and sixth graders, without any help from a teacher, when I got done, I kind of get dramatic at the end. I'll have the 343 and one Jersey City Fireman's picture go through while I play Amazing Grace on the bagpipes. I'm a bagpiper, and I'll play Amazing Grace as it goes through. And when I got done, these fourth, fifth, and sixth graders, without any sign from their teachers, got up and gave me a standing ovation.
Mm,
So, but you know, it's not the same program that I do for adults. You know, I leave things out,
obviously.
but I do it all over the country, and I'll go anywhere. I've done fundraisers. I've done it for fire departments for fundraisers where they charge like $30. I don't take a dime. Just get me there, a beer, and 2 cups of coffee in the kitchen. That's
Right, and
all.
a place to stay. That's all I need, right? And that is amazing, and I agree with you. One of my personal missions, especially out here on the West Coast, is I talk about 9/11 all the time. Most guys don't know, select few do, right? 9/11, the exact day I was in the Coast Guard assigned to Station Sandy Hook, first military units on scene. You
Yep,
alluded to a little bit. I'm not going to harp and tell my story, but again, the rescue efforts that we were involved in, and then the cleanup for weeks and months
yep.
after, there's so many facets to that event that trickled on for years, but we never talk about all the other entities of it. Most people don't know about Building 7. Most people don't know about how many fires were in the area after the collapse.
Everywhere,
People
everywhere.
people don't even talk about the Pentagon and Fairfax County and DC fighting fire for hours and hours, like the amount of fire those guys came across. But if we don't keep talking about it, then educate the young guys coming up. Again, I deal with recruits every day. Most of my recruits now weren't born. They're born in
Yeah,
506. And you're going, holy cow. So you are telling the story for those guys to understand the ultimate sacrifice. And again, the rescue efforts of everyone on scene, but most importantly, New York City Fire Department and what they did. And then making sure that those guys know, because they need to tell that story to the next generation. Because
yeah,
shame on us if we don't tell that story and all the bravery that did happen that day and then weeks on end afterwards.
yeah. And I have some things in my program nobody's ever seen before. I have some great video that Joe Scotto, who was a friend of Harvey Eisen's, he worked for the Bronx District Attorney. He went to fires. He went to crime scenes and videotaped them, and he had all his equipment. He was in a meeting at the North Tower, and he got stuff that nobody's. He might have sold some to the news, but I have his whole thing. I have the whole thing from both buildings come down, and it just. I have clips of that, and people can't believe it was a hurricane force wind going by. Yeah, it was incredible.
Yep.
But like when there were like 3 or 4 third and four alarm fires burning all at the same time with no water going on them. It was. And, and, and I'll tell you, it's probably the last thing I'll tell you, 'cause sometimes it's hard to talk about it. But I was in Building 6 with some guys from Harlem. I don't even know what company it was. We kept hearing there were people trapped. It was really the people in the North Tower, that captain from 5 truck, I think it was, a 6 truck, and they were yelling on the radio. And they gave me a New York City handy talkie, and I was listening to it, and they thought it couldn't be. This guy saying he's trapped in the North Tower. It had to be in Building 6. So we were up in Building 6, up a ladder. We went into Building 6, and the idea was to get into the hallway and then go around and look at all the offices. But we got into the hallway, and I looked down, and when I looked down, I looked at the subways, the crushed subway trains. That's how much power the top of the North Tower went through Building 6 and landed 30, 40 feet below level, crushed all the
The
train
subway
cars,
cars.
subway
Yeah.
cars. And then I walked outside, and I went into this office, and I went out like there was like a veranda, whatever. I climbed over a railing. I just looked out over the area, and just it just struck me. There was a combat company, saw a lot of shit in Vietnam. I saw a lot of bodies, a lot of body bags. It was like almost a daily occurrence. But when I looked out over this scene, I said to myself, and I say it today, what I saw in that one day was worse than I saw in 365 days in Vietnam. It was
Yes.
carnage, and it took a while to hit. I mean, like I said, I think everybody was sort of in some sort of, it just took your mind out of what was going on. I mean, because at the beginning, there were guys sitting around and pass alarms going off, and it was hard to do anything. It was beyond the brain, just couldn't wrap yourself around it. But anyway, I learned, and doing the program, it comforts me when people come to me and say, "Geez, thank you for doing that. We would have never known," or "I wasn't alive. I read about it, but reading doesn't really tell the tale." My first 3 or 4 slides about the New York City Fire Department and the heroic rescues that they made. When it start giving you numbers of people, and it makes me think of numbers. Below Building 1 is a mall. Below Building 1, at any time in the morning, could be 6, 7, 8,000 people in this mall. You get off the train, you go up the escalator. It's a big mall, 20, 30 stores. It's like a mall, except below ground. And New York City thought there may be hundreds and hundreds of people trapped in there. They didn't know. So they asked us if we could go through the Holland Tunnel to the mall and search it. Well, when we got down into the Holland Tunnel, there was like 5 feet of water because all
Mm.
the mains broke and filled the tunnel. The Port Authority floated in these huge pumps and started getting the water down. But an odd thing that it's kind of just tattooed in my mind is my guys paddling over in a Zodiac to New York City in the Holland Tunnel. I mean, just
Holy cow.
yeah. But they credit a train engineer who heard what was going on upstairs, and there's a loudspeaker system for the whole thing, and he got everybody evacuated before the
Wow.
North collapsed. Otherwise, you would have been looking at 10,000 dead people. I mean, just get everybody out. They found one guy at the base of one guy who didn't follow the rules and took the elevator down to get
Mm.
to his car or whatever it was. But yeah, but it was just that was one of the things that New York City asked, and we did it. But it was just it was just too much debris really to you had to wait for a USAR team to get there. Uh, people have to remember New York City. They had 11,400 firemen that day. They could have had 3,000 people on the pile, every firehouse covered, and had like 2,000 left over. Which
Yeah.
enormity of their fire department. But you know what? It was they appreciate everybody that helped, no matter how you did it. I mean, all these big companies sending over tractor trailers full of equipment, Home Depot,
Mm.
all the stores like that, saws, you name it, just unloaded, just unloaded. Here it is, take it, and it just kept coming, just kept coming, just kept coming, and that was miraculous to see how quickly people decided, you know what, we're going to give them everything they need, and
Yeah. A horrible tragedy, but I remember the one thing that I appreciated that came out of there, and I know you experienced it also, was the generosity of everyone in the freaking country at that point. They literally pulled behind New York City, the fire department, and United States of America, and everybody was united for the first time in a very long time. And it sucked that it took that event, and it drives me crazy
yeah,
that we've gone so far away from that. But without, I don't want to have you have to recap everything, but we've been yapping for an hour and a half already. So,
oh,
before we start kind of transition into the end of the season questions, is there anything else that you want to just leave the audience with, especially my generation, right? I'm a 20-year guy now, but everyone coming up through us, you have over 3 decades on the job in an extremely busy city, have had an amazing career between publications, running jobs, experiences, calls, everything under the sun. What would you leave the new generation coming up that you feel is important to make sure that we as the American Fire Service are successful?
oh, you know what, it all boils down to training for me. It's almost I wrote about this once. It's called cyclic training. We can't train on a saw in probie school and 3 months later trying to figure out how to cut a roof. All right. Two things about that, and it happens to volunteers and career. You learn about things, and you move on to the next thing, and then the next thing. I like cyclic training. You know what? If I was a company officer, I'd have my own folder, and whatever's on my ladder truck, whatever on my engine, I'd have each guy pull inch and 3/4. Now in Jersey City, we never had a pre-connect. It's always been like that. And the other thing about Jersey City is the first engine in, booster tank. There's no hydrant close by. I have video of us knocking fires down because 500 gallons of water gives you, I don't know, like 200,000 cubic inches of steam. But you know what? Why if you don't use it? What do you have it there for? So anyway, but if I was a company officer nowadays, I would make sure all my guys go through all the basics, pulling the line off, knowing the nozzle. When you grab the nozzle and you're crawling down a hallway, is it on straight stream or is it? You have to know. How are you going to know? Well, you practice. You know what left is. You know what right. Things like that. All right? Anything at all. The pump panel, ladder truck, all the simple. Every month, all right, you do this, you do this, and I would check it off. Hey, you did that really well. You know what? You need to practice with cyclic training every month. Train on the basics. Train on the basics. I mean, that's a big deal with me. Is if we're getting too far, you know. But the training. The other thing is the fire service has been taking care of itself. I go back to when I first started. We had 1-inch booster lines. Then we had 3/4-inch booster lines. Fires got bigger, got hotter. We went to 1-inch booster. Then we went to 1.5 inches. Now that was starting to get a little creepy because we got synthetics and all this. We went to 1.75 inches, right? We needed that. We figured that out, and that's what we went to. Things are getting a little tougher now. Now I see my volley company's got all 2-inch. Jersey City's got, you can have 1.75 inches or 2-inch. You got both, all right? Because it's getting a little bit, fires are getting a little bit bigger. We're doing things, the saws now that we have, cuts faster, cut through more things. We understand the fire service has taught itself to understand the structures, what's going on in them. I lived through all of it. I lived through when they went to trusses. HUD came in and built truss homes in Jersey City, didn't have to follow the city building code. Well, we learned what was in there. We learned what to do. And we didn't learn on firefighter deaths either. We learned on experience, going through it. Maybe look at a book, look at a video, vacant building. Then the real thing happens. You know what? You have something, but it's not like we don't. I don't want to say I don't believe in science. I've been to when I was at ISO. I went to a lot of these scientific experiments. People are going to yell at me, and I don't give a shit. A lot of these scientific experiments I went to were built to succeed. And you know what? it just blows my mind that they get a vacant building, they set it up, they bring this one in particular, they bring the volley company down, they spend an hour and a half going over the building, every square foot of it. And then, they hit the fire from outside, and then take the line in the front door. This was the hit it hard from the yard thing. And I'm standing there looking at this. I said, number one, how many of us have ever gone through a building that's been on fire before it gets on fire? Unrealistic to me. Two, we're about to open up, not me, they're about to open up the line, and the guy goes, oh, stop. And he looks, he goes, somebody go in and take that thing hanging down from the ceiling. And I said to him, why? He says, because this is based on a straight stream. We can't have the stream break up because it'll cause so much stream. And I was like, I wanted to leave. But I've seen that in 3 or 4 experiments where it was built for success. It wasn't realistic. Realistic is what we've done, what we've learned, and how to cope with this. I mean, most fire departments, guys get killed. The guy in Chicago just got, God rest his soul, he just got killed. He fell for whatever reason. They arrested the guy who set the fire. I mean, there are things that are going to happen. But I think we've done a pretty good job. I mean, look at our safety record nationally. Let me tell you about what we haven't done for another day. More firemen die of their own hand in suicide than are killed in the line of duty every year. That's an absolute fact. PTSD, whatever you want to call it, more firemen are killed by suicide than in a burning smoke-filled building. And I differentiate between firemen getting killed inside a smoke-filled burning building or standing next to it than a guy died rolling his truck over or something. I mean, they're sad, they're line of duty, but maybe I learned that in the Army. You get shot, it's kind of line of duty. You fall off the Jeep and break your arm, it's nothing. Or if you fall off the Jeep and die, nothing. You get shot in combat, it's line of duty. So I'm not saying, it was a sacrifice, but I kind of look at 2 sides of this, what? But we're doing a pretty good job. I think you have to admit it. Look at the facts. We don't have 150 firemen dying inside a burning smoke-filled building. So we're doing a pretty good job. But, it just seems to me we've kind of always taken care of ourselves. We knew we need bigger, better lines. We needed this. We need, bigger pumps, I guess, bigger booster tanks. It just, and you know what? volunteer firemen, I'm not knocking, I've been one for a long time. In some respects, volunteer firemen have to train more than career firemen. You know why? Because a volunteer fireman, when you get there, you don't know what your job's going to be. You got an engine and a truck and a tanker. It's usually the first 4 guys showing up get on that engine. So you know what? If you're good on a truck and you can drive, pump the tank, you don't know. You know, you have to hone your skills on everything. So I think that the volunteers need to train more often. You know, they have less fires than a career department, but you know, when your time comes, you better know what you're doing. And so that's probably the answer
Training.
to later.
Well, good. It's true. I mean, it recaps exactly what you said. Hey, training, right? And I like the fact that you're like, hey, I'm going to do it with my guys monthly and just rinse and repeat. We're going to keep going and keep going because most departments, unfortunately, they do that, but they do that once a year. And guess what? The guys that, right, are not staying up on their stuff, they train for that test a week before just so they can
Yeah.
be competent enough to stay on the job. And then they think it's okay. And that's, again, my personal opinion, never okay. Not a brother, not a real fireman. But again, that is just Steve Orsini's opinion. All right.
One,
I'll
one, one,
jump off that soapbox.
one last quick thing about Jersey City, and I think a lot of guys are going to like this. We've never, in the history of Jersey City, have done any EMS.
Oh my God. Yeah, I think I'm gonna probably move back to Jersey right now and see if I can get picked up over there. Because
County
yeah,
runs
the
EMS.
job is the best job ever, and then get rid of EMS, it's heaven.
It's
Let's
all the
talk. Let's
EMTs and
talk.
paramedics are run by the county. We tried getting regular away from. We couldn't do it. Some strange laws in Jersey City about paramedics on a fire truck and stuff, but never. You know, we tried doing some first responders. It was wrecking the springs on some of the fire trucks. We could do that, but yeah. So for the most
Crazy.
part, never did any formal EMS, but busy enough though with the rest of it.
Oh yeah, and again, that would be I think every fireman listening to probably their wet dream. So Jersey City boys, I'm jealous. We're all jealous of you. Keep it up. Don't say anything. Just keep running your business. But so Chief, we amazing career, crazy stories. I mean, I love every second of it, and I really appreciate you just opening up and like telling us all these great things that's happened over your decades in the fire service. But we know how you got on the job now. We've talked about militaristic and traditions and how great the Brotherhood is. But let's talk about traditions for a second. So, love this question. What is your favorite American Fire Service tradition? But more importantly, why? Doesn't have to be from Jersey City, but it absolutely can. So, what's the tradition that you love so much? But more
Yeah.
importantly, tell the audience why you love it.
You know, it's difficult. This is not self-serving or anything, but you know what? In Jersey City, I love the tradition of Medal Day. And people are going to say, "Oh, well, yeah," but you know what Medal Day does? It brings all the families together. All right, because if you're getting something, your family's there. It's a big deal. They want, and the families get there and all get together. And I love that. I love, because you know what? Once we went to 24th and 72th, a lot of guys started moving out of the city, and you know, it was a prerogative. The law said you had to live in the state, and 1 year in residency in Jersey City. But once you're on, the law says you have to be there when you get appointed. Once your probationary period of 1 year is over, you can move out. So I knew when I was chief of operations on the 366th day, I would get 30 change addresses. But that continued to bring the families together. The kids were there, the families were there, and afterward we were always getting together. You know, one of the hotels, like the Hyatt or the Hilton, they would donate the ballroom, and even if you didn't know somebody, it brought the families out every year. So in Jersey City, I like that. I really love that. You know, tradition of honoring line of duty deaths. And that's what got me into bagpipes. I decided, instead of listening to it, I wanted to do it. I played more funerals than anything else, but I think the way we honor our members are unlike, even better than I don't know if better is the word, but we do the best job when we lose somebody. Even retirees. I mean, how many jobs they walk out with hundreds of people applauding, and I just went to Pete Greasy. He did, I don't know how many years he did, but a lot, like 40 some odd years, and turned 65. They kicked him out. I went down there. His whole volunteer company came down. They brought a fire truck down from North Jersey to Jersey City to see him out. Now he's a
That's
chief.
awesome.
Oh yeah. So I like that too. The tradition of even when you're done, you're not done. We still
Right.
got you.
Yeah. Once you're a brother, you're always a brother, right? So you do enough
Absolutely.
time, you're a
Yeah.
brother.
Yeah. So they're the two things I really, one specific to Jersey City. They do a great job at that. And New York City too. I've been to several of theirs. But that and the fact that, I like what they do for, um, we used to do what I don't think they can do it. We used to invite retired guys back. I said, if you're a captain, we promote captains, bring a couple old captains back, give them a lunch, have them sit down and mentor these guys. Tell them what it's
Yes.
really like, because you know what? It's, I don't want to get off on another train, but you know what? The training schools I go to now, we don't make kids afraid. These kids in training school with the gas fires and the fake smoke, they're smart enough, they're not afraid. And I don't like that part of it, but that's, we need to go back throwing 2x4s in a barrel, I guess. But anyway, but they're the two traditions that I love, and I continue to see, and I continue to go to. I go to them. I fly back all the time.
That's awesome. And again, I love exactly why you love it, because it brings everybody together. And one of our biggest complaints in today's American Fire Service is we don't get that very often, because schedules, you got 4896s, 2472s, everything else. You got guys in Cali, work in Cali, live in Arizona, and they'll do a bunch of shift trades, work a week straight, and then they're off or whatever. But again, if you have something like Medal Day, which I love so much more than what a lot of departments do, where they'll do, hey, we're going to every year nominate guys for whatever, Fireman of the Year, this. I like Medal Day just because it's, hey, you're getting recognized for your actions of what we get freaking paid for, right? To do what you're doing, your job. It's not because your buddy wrote a really cool narrative and then you're going to get picked up for a piece of paper or something. This is like, hey, you did a good job on this job, and then everyone gets to know about it too. So I love every aspect of it. We don't have it in the area I work. I wish we did. That would be one of the most amazing experiences ever. And then it would be something that we could hold on to forever. So yeah, Chief, freaking awesome answer. So with all the years you have, you promoted extremely high, but I'm going to promote you one more time to the ultimate spot. I call it the commission of the universe, fire chief of the world, whatever you want to call it. So you run the show, and through FM fucking magic, you snap your fingers and you change something in the American Fire Service. So that could be add, delete, whatever it is, but it happens right now with zero sweat equity. So instant gratification. What would it be? But more importantly, why? Why are we adding, deleting, or changing something for you, boss?
Okay, you're going to think this is kind of odd, but I got to know this. All the money that the federal government gives, and it's been going on for years, 15, 20 years, for staffing, for equipment, for training, for fire prevention, there's millions and millions, and hundreds of millions of dollars out there for fire departments. Okay, now when that initially happened, it was supposed to go to fire departments that were at the lower level of the NFPA standards. All right, and the money was supposed to go to them so they could build themselves up to at least a norm. Whether it's volunteer or career, whatever it was, if your career, here's money to put guys on, more guys on, as a
Mhm.
crew. For the volunteers, more training, better training, more equipment. The money was supposed to go to the lower tier and raise them up. Okay, that's gone. That's gone. So if it was me, I'd go back to that. I would look at the fire departments that need, because again, I've traveled the country for ISO, and I've seen things that you wouldn't think that could happen in the 2000s. 3 Scott packs to 15 guys. I mean, no place, they got to drive an hour and a half to fill their bottle. It's just nuts. So we need to get back to that, because what happened was, with all that money out there, all these people, congressmen and senators and whatnot, they had their favorite places, their favorite cities.
Mhm.
And when you see some of these cities getting $6, $7 million, and I wish I could give you the name of one, but I'm not gonna, because a city that's got a lot of movie stars living in California gets a huge amount of money. And maybe they should, but I think it's been misdirected. And if I was in charge, I'd redirect it, because there's a lot of people dying. If you look at the people that die where they're from, I mean, they're not in the big cities that much anymore. They're in rural places. And you know what? If the fire department had more equipment, or could afford maybe a few career guys, I just think we need to bolster the bottom half of the American fire service up towards places like Jersey City or Beverly Hills or Patterson. When I saw it at the beginning, I said, "It's a great idea," but it's gone now. It's gone. It just the money goes to whoever has the most power in government. I can give it to my city, and it's just crazy. So I would just like to see fire departments get better, and some fire departments need money to get better. Period. That's kind of crazy. I don't know what you think of it, but that's if I'm the chief of the world, that's what I do. I
Oh,
help.
no, I'll tell you what, I love it, and I love it for one particular thing comes in my brain as soon as you said that. So last year, me and a couple of my buddies, we traveled to a fire conference in Mississippi to teach and help out, and there was a bunch of career departments. It was a fools run organization, some volunteer departments, everything else. And I'm just trying to meet everybody, chat them up, right? And you talk to one guy, yeah, hey, I work for whatever department. I was like, cool, how far is that from here? How many stations you guys have? How big are you? And it's all these guys from super small departments, one station, maybe two, right? And then I run into one guy, he's like, yeah, I work for whatever county. He's like, we got 14 houses. I'm like, oh shit, that's the biggest count I heard since I've been out here. I'm like, well, good for you guys. He's like, haha, Steve, let me back up for a second. He's like, you're going to be pissed once you hear this. He goes, 14 stations, 14 dudes, driver only, piece of apparatus. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? He's like,
Really?
no, I wish. And then those poor guys in the state of Mississippi, and this made me so angry. In order to make a living, they can't make a living just as being a fireman, but then they have to do 35 freaking years on the job to get 40% of their pension. It's criminal. So if you were the freaking fire chief or the commissioner of the universe, that state should get the first huge,
Absolutely.
send all the money that year to the state of Mississippi. Let's get them up and going. And then exactly like you're saying, the departments that are struggling, let's get them up to where they at least have a minimum staffing of 3. God forbid, let's try to get them to 4. Nothing should be going out 1 or 2 guys in 2026. That's insane. But the crazy thing is the general public has no freaking idea.
Yeah.
They think the fire department, they call and they're just going to get everybody under the sun. They might get one dude, driver only because it's the only career guy they have. That sucks.
I don't see many fire chiefs up at council meetings yelling about 3 is not enough. I have to put 4 on every. The fire chief will say NFPA says I need to get new gear. NFPA says I need to get new air packs. But I don't see him saying the NFPA says I need 16 people on the first alarm for a residential house fire. I need 24 people for a garden apartment fire. I need 42 for a high-rise fire. I don't see them up there yelling. I don't see the hierarchy of the fire service yelling about staffing. And staffing is the key to everything. Everything.
I can't say that better. Yeah, you're absolutely correct. The area that I came from was the Baltimore region, and our staffing was adequate. We were in 3 on everything. Our special ops units had 4, but I relocated out to here to the Phoenix metro area, and there's 4 dudes. And I'm like, whoa, but I'll tell you what, being back east for almost 11 years and then coming out here, it is a considerable difference by 1 extra dude on how much extra work you can get done. Imagine throwing 5 on every truck, 4 on every wagon, at least across the country. Guess what? The craziest thing, fires from your heyday, right, are down, but civilian deaths are way higher than you guys had, because of exactly what's going on. It sucks. That's where we're at right now. So something needs to change.
Yeah, I'm not a big statistics guy, but of course I had to get into statistics because I work for a company that was built on statistics. But if you look at it, fires are down, but more civilians are dying where they live than ever before.
Yes.
That percentage has gone up. So what does that tell you? Are we not going in and getting them? Or would you believe what the scientists say? Well, the fires are hotter, they can't get out. I mean, you know what? You got to look at this. Why is that? Why are more people dying where they live than ever before when there's less fires? Somebody has to do a deep dive on it. They don't want to hear
I'll give my personal opinion, and I could be 100% wrong, but this is just what I believe. I do believe it's the fuel loads are different. But with that said, because the fuel loads are different, we have less time to respond and get there. We need more departments, we need more houses, we need more trucks, we need more guys, because we have to do a lot more work on the front end rapidly because we were behind the clock because of the fuel loads. But we never adapted as the American Fire Service to say, we're building all these new houses, but we didn't add any more firehouses. Now we're adding all these additional fuels, but we're not increasing staffing levels. So it's our fault as the country, as the American Fire Service, not the guys responding, but the officials, whoever decides on those staffing levels from the state or feds down, they never adjusted. And who pays the price? The civilians do. And we have to do more with less.
Yeah, well, the simple answer, and I said this to a lot of fire chiefs, and some say, "Oh, yeah, that's a good idea." They'll send 2 and 1 to report a house fire, all right, with 3 guys on each rig. Well, and have 3 engines in a truck not going. Well, why not send 3 engines or 4 engines in a truck and a chief? And but what if we have another fire? Well, when's the last time that happened? Like, you can't plan for everything. So, but it bothers me, and I see that everywhere, that they only send the smallest amount that they have to, hoping that it's not a fire. And it just,
Yeah.
that's roll the dice firefighting. I mean, just roll the dice. You put your guys in danger, but you know what? Well, that's all the money I can get. Well, make some noise. Well, they'll fire me. Well, then, you know what? Move on to someplace else. It just, the answers are right here. The staffing, training, and deployment, or how fast you get there, are the 3 key things to me in any good fire department.
There you go. Well, with that said, I mean, that's the perfect way to wrap us up right now. We know exactly what we need to do for the future of the American Fire Service. So, Chief, thank you again. Everyone that made it this far, we could have this podcast going for 5 hours, but I wouldn't dare take all Chief's time. So thank you for making it this far. Chief, is there anything you want to leave the audience with before we sign off, boss?
No, not really. You know what? Maybe someday in the future we can come back and hone it down to one subject. I love this. You know what? Retired guy, I don't get to go back in time and tell the whole story. We left a couple of things out. I had some great stories about why I became a fireman that I left out. I told you my dad and the Yankees, and my dad was almost a New York Yankee, and then World War II came. But anyway.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Well, you guess so we just have to do round 2, which is absolute perfect. So we'll just say part 1 with Chief Cobb, part 2 in our near future. So guys, thanks for hanging around, and you're going to see Chief again here shortly. So thank you so much. We'll see you guys in another 2 weeks.
Thank you. I appreciate it.